Hello and welcome. First and foremost, thank you to those that took the time to ask a question. I hope the answers I give are satisfying. As always, I appreciate the support you've shown, and I hope you accept this small token of gratitude. For those wondering, these questions come from those that are members of this channel. If you'd like to join in on future Q&As, which I hope to do somewhat regularly, then click the join button below this video and choose the option most suitable for you. Any and all support is highly appreciated. Thus ends the transparently thin promotional portion of this video. On to the questions. I'm going to combine some questions together because there are a few that basically have the same theme. What is your origin story? What got you into comics? So I'm going to begin this with my rambling history with comics. While I had read tons of comics prior to this example, the comic that hooked me forever was Fantastic Four number 190. My little developing brain went crazy for this issue. It's simply a recap of the team's history, but it ends with the Thing proclaiming the Fantastic Four are done. Sure, they had broken up in the past, but this time it was for good. The history was tragic, and Ben Grimm was, well, pretty grim, and in hindsight, it was overly melodramatic. But for whatever reason, this appealed to me. I mean, I can generally intellectualize or justify why I find something enjoyable. But this is just a mystery when I look back on it. And you know what? I'm pretty fine with that. Another comic around this time was Howard the Duck. I had bought and read the Star Wars parody issues, but it was the following issue that made a significant impact. I mean, the cover says it all. Where do you go? What do you do? The day after you've saved the universe. Gene Colan's art is just perfect, by the way. It conveyed the existential dread and confusion of Howard in a way that easily translated into my young mind. I didn't understand it, but I knew it wasn't a good feeling. Over the years, other comics that renewed my appreciation of the medium are numerous. Possibly the one that needs to be mentioned first is Love and Rockets. I've sat down a few times to make a video about that series, but every script begins with the same sentence. This may be the greatest comic ever made. And then, well, I kind of get stuck because that's about all that needs to be said. There's also Grendel, Go-Man, Brat Pack, Neat Stuff, Miracle Man, Grimjack. There's a large list of titles that were different and continually renewed my interest in the medium, and more keep being discovered to this day. For some, like myself, my origin may begin with superheroes, but over time, my tastes have matured and wandered into other genres. And this diversification of material, to intentionally use a hot-button term, has kept me interested in the medium, not one specific genre. So that's the shortest, most concise version of my origin and history. What was the last book/series that really surprised you? This should have been a video already, but the answer to that is The Monster Society of Evil. It does contain some very uncomfortable stereotypes, and that's what makes it a difficult subject to discuss. Overall, it goes all over the place, it's quite imaginative, and it has a surprise ending that would not get written today. Is there a creative team or character that you fan over? Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. Even if the premise doesn't interest me whatsoever, I'd still sit down and read it. For synergy, I can't think of a better team. Favorite cult comic/comic series? Tough question. Mainly because I'm unsure how to qualify a cult comic. I think I'd have to go with Herbie, the Fat Fury. It's so wonderfully crazy and charming, and I'm pretty sure it's a title that has cult status. Favorite comic book movies/TV shows, or movies/shows that feel like a comic book? I hope this doesn't sound disingenuous, but I generally don't think I've seen a movie or TV show that felt like a comic book. There's an intrinsic quality to the medium that just doesn't translate onto the screen, and vice versa. Maybe, a distant maybe, might be Avengers: Infinity War, but I don't even feel comfortable suggesting that. A second possibility is American Splendor. That might be a better choice, actually. That had the same tone of Harvey P. Carr's work. If you had Warren Buffett money, what one comic book movie/TV show would you pay to make, and your dream team? I would make the first martial law miniseries, Fear and Loathing, into an 8-part series. I don't think I have a dream team in mind. The cast would probably be unknowns who fit the role. Although now that I think about it, Tom Hardy would be good for martial law. As an actor, he makes choices that are almost always interesting and understated. Now, let's say no one would let me have creative control of that project. In that case, I would find the entire creative team who did the 2012 Judge Dredd movie and give them $200 million to do the Dredd movie they want to make. If you read Tom King's Batman, what did you think of it? Well, I was going to do an entire review of that Tom King run just after it completed. Then I sat down, started reading it, and made my notes as I went along. And, according to my half-completed script, I made it to Rules of Engagement and gave up. There are some bits I like. I thought Selina Kyle was well done, and the issue where Bruce, Selina, Lois, and Clark all hung together was a pretty good interlude. But, I just didn't care about where it was going. I still don't, actually. For me, it's Tom King burnout. Specifically, it's Mr. King going to the same well with different characters. That may be an assessment that's a touch unfair, and I might retract that in the future, but at the moment, it looks like he's working out his own issues through superheroes. It's a theme that has become tiresome, and it needs to be shelved until he can come at it from a different angle. What's your past and present favorite series, runs, creators, etc.? Any underrated creators or books you'd like to get word out about? Favorite runs? Jonathan Hickman's run on the Fantastic Four, for sure. Alan Moore's transformative run with John Totleben and Rick Veitch on Swamp Thing. The sheer lunacy of The Invisibles by Grant Morrison, and various. As for underrated creators, my go-to is always Steve Gerber. What are you currently reading? I'm currently reading Captain Britain, Concrete, Baker Street, Eagle, and Trekker. These are all possibilities for videos. Captain Britain or Baker Street will probably be sooner rather than later. Stray Toasters is also being reread too. What does your recording editing rig consist of? My microphone is a blue Snowball that's 15 years old and getting close to expiring, I think. I record everything in GarageBand and then edit in Final Cut. It's all done on an 8-year-old Mac that is, like the microphone, starting to show its age. It's a pretty low-budget operation, let me tell you. Do you have any pets? Yes, I have one kitty. What videos of yours are you most fond of, proud of? That's a tough choice. If I'm honest, I think the Watchmen analysis is probably one of the best. Like with American Flag, I just said, screw it. I'm gonna go down the rabbit hole, and if I lose some people along the way, so be it. Both were topics that I threw myself into much more than usual. Right or wrong, there are some elaborations that are very filtered through my own perceptive tools. But they're supported by the evidence on the page. So it's probably more accurate to say there are moments I'm proud of, rather than entire videos. I don't want to flatter myself too much, but I think I did bring something to the discussion with both, which I think is important. What's your drink of choice? Water and coffee are my usual fuel. You've mentioned before that Alan Moore being possibly your favorite writer in comics. Have any of his significant projects been a letdown to you? Inversely, has Mark Millar ever blown you away? Yes, I have been disappointed. The Lovecraft trilogy arrived at a conclusion that didn't work, in my opinion. There are some people who violently disagree with me on that, and that's fine. But I found the end undermined the most important aspect of the mythos, and that's the irrelevancy of the human race to these other dimensional creatures. No, I cannot say Mr. Millar has written anything that has blown me away. Mind you, to give that context, I don't go out of my way to read his work. All I can say is that what I have read has consistently left a bad taste in my brain. Seeing as your Swamp Thing video series is on hold or abandoned, what's your opinions on the Collins and Morrison/Miller runs of Swamp Thing? I thought I had covered Nancy A. Collins, but I suppose I didn't. The script for both her and Miller's run are complete. I think I must have gotten Swamp Thing burnout before editing those together. Anyway, Collins' run was okay, from what I remember. It had a lot of editorial input, as they were trying to stop the title from bleeding readers. It's pretty distinct as its own entity. The Morrison/Miller run I think of less kindly. There are some parts that are pure edgelord material, and a few storylines lacked any logic whatsoever. Seriously, I need to get back to that series, remake it all, and finish it. Have you read Final Crisis? If so, what's your take on it? I have read it, But I need to read it again because, honestly, I didn't pay attention to it when I did read it. My take on it at this moment? It's a mess. But it would be quite unfair to give it a full review or opinion on it. Quite simply, it's not something that impressed me at the time. But again, to give that context, I was very bored of DC doing a crisis event every few years. It was tiresome. It may be some time before I can reread it and give it a proper review or analysis. What is one series or character that you thought would have been a surefire hit, but just didn't connect with an audience? Speedball. No, I'm kidding. I can't think of any character in particular, to be honest. As for series, Sleeper by Brubaker and Phillips. To this day, I don't understand how that title didn't find an audience. It baffles me, it truly does. What is your favorite age of the comic medium? It would have to be the Bronze Age. It was when the medium was exploding with ideas and creative freedom. Putting aside Marvel and DC's output at the time, everything else by everyone else was fresh and exciting. Objectively, it was a very important time. But again, that's a time period when I was much younger, and that leads to the inclusion of a nostalgic element that colors one's opinion. Still, it was a really good time. What have you always wanted to get your hands on, but just haven't been lucky enough to get a copy? I hate to admit this, but I retired, so to speak, from collecting comics about a decade ago, and I'm strictly a reader nowadays. So I don't have a list of comics that I'm actively seeking and can't find. Although prior to that, the first 3 black and white issues of Grendel were a pain to find. What was the greatest accidental find you ever made at a flea market or garage or con? Beware the Claws of the Cat #1 in very fine condition. It was at this oddball antique store in my hometown. If I remember correctly, it was in a cardboard box with possibly a few dozen comics. Sure, not the most amazing find ever, but the surroundings were surreal, so it always sticks in my memory. Well, I think that about wraps it up. Thanks again to everyone for the questions. And my apologies that this video is a little later than usual. It's been exceptionally hot this past week, and really, you're cutting me off here. All right. Until next time.